and he's coming towards me. And David Silva's not like, he doesn't look strong or anything like that, and I don't really know his game. And there's someone right on his back. So I didn't pass him the ball, passed it somewhere else. Yeah, it's like, I can't give it to him. So I gave it somewhere else. And he was telling me off. He said, why don't you not give me the ball? I was like, well, because there's someone behind you. He says, no, that's when I want the ball, because that's when he's in control of the situation. And that's the first time I'd ever really played with someone who thought about the game through that lens.
I try and say that to the lads at five-a-side, and they still don't give me the ball.
Yeah, there's probably a reason for that.
I refuse to engage with that. I refuse to engage with that.
Next.
The official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us here. So we relaunched the podcast in 2023. We've done 20 episodes since then. So we thought it'd be a nice opportunity for us to sit down and have a conversation about where we're at and how much we've enjoyed it. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you because we did a few episodes before you came and joined us on NA. What's your perception of the podcast? What makes this podcast interesting for City fans across the world?
I think there's lots of reasons. You know, we all see them in the pitch on a Saturday. We see them in clips in City TV on the websites as well. But getting an insight into what they're like as people, you know, their families, especially the foreign lads, how they felt moving over, how they've integrated into Manchester away from the football. And probably the biggest thing I've got out of all of them, and you know, you can see it on the pitch, but how close they are as a group. You know, just every single one that you speak to talks about the harmony in the group, the team spirit. It's an old cliche and everything else, but that's the thing that really comes across, and the honesty from them as well. You know, some of the ones we done beforehand, we're thinking, can we ask them this question? How much do we delve into their background and everything else? But the players were absolutely fantastic, and you know, they were, as I said, that they were honest with what they said, and a lot of the things that did come out, they didn't have to come and do it. So, fantastic insight for the fans.
Nedum, same question to you. I mean, what do you think makes it so good?
I think it's the stuff that Paul's saying there, because like with players, the story which they can't get wrong is their own.
Yeah.
You know, so when they start telling it, it's coming from a place where they know it better than anybody else. I think from the outside, we think we know these people. We think we know the setup. We think we know what they need to do to be successful. But every time we sit down, we learn something new about the individual, about the football club. So you sit there and you forget sometimes, like, what I do anyway. I'm meant to be working, but I'm also just listening, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes they'll take you on these stories, whether it's, say, Kyle right at the start or someone younger like Erling that we had recently. And it's really fascinating. And I think the audience, when they listen in, they know that they'll hear something different on this show compared to anywhere else, because here, this is where they're most open.
They do, yeah. They do all feel quite relaxed, don't they? Paul's point there about team spirit and togetherness, that does come through, and that's something we hear, to be fair, not just from the players but from coaches who I speak to and all that kind of stuff, that the group is so together. Do you think that, have you picked up on that as well?
100%. Like they are very quick to mention other people that they play with and work with, whether that's just players, like staff, like the kit man, anyone and everyone. I think that's part of the culture of the football club. When one person says it, you say, okay, well, maybe you'll believe it. But when everybody says it and everyone's saying the same thing, like, they're just being open and honest. And it sounds like, I'll be honest, a fantastic place to work, a fantastic place to play, if you know what I mean. And I think it explains a lot, not just about their ability, but the culture that they have to be able to be successful.
It's very easy to come out in press conferences and interviews and say, oh, the team spirit's fantastic. Nobody at any team in the country is going to come out and say, no, the team spirit's rubbish. But when you sit and speak to the players, that's the one thing that's genuine and genuinely shines through.
It's in their own words as well, isn't
exactly,
it? That's the key thing. It's not the same sentences or phrases. They're saying it in their own way. It might be that it's taking their game to a new level. It might be, oh, I really get on with this person, or I love the city, I love the facilities, or anything. They're saying it how they want to say it, but the underlying thing is it's all the same. The same.
If they all come out and say the same thing, you would think it's a bit scripted. They've all done it in their own way.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you would have noticed as well, George, but like, nobody's asking them a question about team spirit. They're coming out and saying it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you know that it comes from a good place, when, you know, you don't need to be prompted to be able to say it.
That's Rob and I on our questions list, just going team spirit.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we can confirm that one can go, yeah, we're all done, yeah.
George, you've co-hosted a couple. What are your experience, so far? Have you enjoyed doing them, and what's your approach when you're coming onto one? How do you try to get the best out of one of our guests?
Yeah, I've loved it. I've loved the experience, not just in terms of like having the opportunity to speak to players on a more relaxed setting, because I mean, hopefully I'm come across quite approachable, but when you've got a massive camera behind you after a game, a lot of players probably don't want to speak to you. So being in a relaxed setting with people that they know who've been there and done it as well means that I feel like you can relax as well and sort of let the conversation flow as you want. In terms of preparation, the first one that I was lucky enough to do was with Jill Roord. I've spoken with Jill before, really get on with her, really like her, but I was very nervous. And I felt very sort of ready for an exam. I had my list ready of questions. I was like, right, I've done my research here. About 5 minutes in, it all just goes out the window, doesn't it? And you just have your conversation and really enjoy it. So obviously preparation is key still, but like having that relaxation, letting your shoulders drop and just go, well, right, let's just see where this goes is a really nice approach and something unique, I think, which is why podcasts in general and this podcast are so good and so effective.
Yeah, 'cause me and Nedum, we researched for weeks before.
Oh my gosh, so many weeks. We know everything about everything and
preparation in
everyone.
front of these pair.
I was going to say I had to introduce myself to them. I'm joking.
And I would echo that though, because I do the same. I will come with lots of stats and information, and I agree with you. Often within a few minutes you realise that this is just a conversation. And obviously we have two ex-pros as well, which I think brings a nice balance, because you've got kind of a fan's way of looking at things, and we will ask certain questions, but then I think the players open up a little bit more when they realise that they're sat with. Which brings me to one of my favourite episodes actually, which was the Kovacic one. Yeah. He was very interested in you and your career, wasn't he? There was 2 or 3 occasions where he was kind of trying to tie what his experience, what was the equivalent experience 15, 20 years ago when you were playing, which I thought was really, really interesting.
It caught me in the hop a little bit, because I wasn't expecting it. You're sitting there and you're listening to them talking, you're thinking, how can I follow that up with the next question about careers? And he was very humble in everything he done, but super interested what it was like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. What they asked what the sports science and the physios was like, and it was like there was none. We had one physio and one assistant physio sort of thing, but not just so much. He was generally interested, not so much in my career, but what the club was like back then and where it is now. And I think it shows that all the players that come into the club, they're not just coming for what the club is now. They're super interested in the history of the club. They want to know about the club, and they want to be part of it, not just now, but what it was like back then. And it was a great show. He was super. Somebody that's won 5 Champions Leagues. The humility of the guy.
Flex, isn't it? You said 5.
5 Champions Leagues. And his story coming crazy going into a changing room at Inter Milan, where it was like, wow, it was in 18, wasn't it, when he went there?
Yeah.
And then going from Inter Milan into a Real Madrid changing room that's winning multiple Champions Leagues, and how he handled it, and his relationship with Luka Modric, how he took him under his wing. But it was great, and how hungry he was to succeed. He's not happy that he's just won all these Champions Leagues. He wants more and more and more.
I remember when he said that, I mean, he'd learned so much. You talk that he's played for some of the biggest clubs in the world. He's won loads of trophies, but he said in the sort of few months he'd been at City,
how much he'd learned.
Yeah, he'd learned so much, and Pep had almost kind of, given him a new way of seeing the game, which is quite a testament to the manager, really, isn't it?
It is, and he actually said, and it was no disrespect to these wonderful clubs that he's played for, but he wished he came under Pep when he was 20, 21. He's 28, 29 now, and he's learnt so much already. What would he have learnt if he came when he was 21?
Do you have a favourite episode so far, Nedum?
I've been very fortunate to do quite a lot of them. Recency bias would say the Haaland one, because that was good value, because he's very good value, very, very good value. But I also liked speaking with Rico Lewis.
Yeah,
listening to what he was like as a person, seeing what makes him who he is, the drive that he has, and speaking to him as someone who's basically a first-year professional who's won everything in his first year as a professional. But then,
because you resonate with him from when you came through.
Yes and no. In the timing of it, in terms of how he got into the team, yes. But in terms of the conditions he had to play under, no. You know what I mean? Like, this was a kid who, plays in the first part of the season, then in the second half of the season after the World Cup in winter, which is like unprecedented as we remember it. He's then playing a big part in City trying to climb up to the top of the table, City trying to push on in the FA Cup, City trying to win a Champions League. And that's not really a soft introduction as such,
No,
you could say.
yeah.
So to hear how he perceived it, to hear how like he's done all that and he's celebrated it, but he wants to be a bigger part of it going forward and how he's going to work to get that, I think that's quite inspirational. But then again, the next stage of that was speaking with Phil Foden. Like, that's the boy, you know what I mean? Phil's the boy, isn't he?
Yeah.
When you hear him talk and hear his story and his sort of like connection for the football club, and he's so easy to forget he's 22, 23. Seems like he's been playing for 10 years and he's in his late 20s.
I've seen a crazy stat the other day there, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he's won a trophy on average every 15 or 16 games that he's played.
Do you know what I mean?
It's just ridiculous.
But yeah, I think I liked the Haaland one more than any other, just because for as much as he's one of the biggest stars in world football, he's also one of the most humble people I think I've ever heard within the world of football.
And just fun as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Like he just wanted to have a good time.
And he just loves football.
And he loves football.
Loves
that was
football.
Nedum
Loves
made
football.
that observation that not in like a really studious way, just in a really natural love of the game. You know, you can just tell. You said he's online. He's very much online. He's following everything that's going on. But also, you can tell he's been watching Premier League football since since he was a kid and all that kind of stuff, which was it was great. The Rico one I did want to bring up actually, because that was one of my favourites too, and I think the episode kind of really embodied who he is as a footballer. You know, I wrote a few words down: maturity, intelligence, and grounded. I think those were three things that really came through, and that's kind of who he is, isn't it? As a young lad. Yeah,
he certainly is, and I think, you know, he gave a lot of credit to his parents and stuff, and you can see that, and that level of maturity is something that he's obviously had through the academy, but something that he really needed when he stepped into that dressing room with those players and entered this realm where like all the eyes are on you, and the only way to like not fail is to just win all the time. You know, that's a very, very intense pressure, but I think he's got his own ideas of how he wants to do it, and those ways are ways which you can get behind, because he wants to work hard, he wants to learn his craft, and he wants to listen to those around him, make the most of his resources. Because I think some people say, you know, because you've got all this stuff here, it's easy and of course you'll be successful. But for some people, they don't maximise their potential in that surrounding. But for him, since we've spoken to him, I think he's an England international now as well, isn't he?
He is indeed.
The biggest bit with Rico, Phil, that we're talking about, and Oscar and the young lads that are coming through now, then Nedum will tell you it's that maturity that Nedum spoke about to go into a first team dressing room. Because the one thing, you can be the best young player, the one thing you need to get is acceptance of the first team players, and that's just not on the training pitch, that's off the pitch as well. So for them being so young and to have that maturity and professionalism to go in there and be accepted very, very, because it's tough. I remember as a kid going into, you know, they look at you on the training pitch, and if they don't trust you, they don't give you the ball.
It's a fact,
They go somewhere else. They don't talk to you in the changing room if they don't think you're up to that level. And I think it's a huge, huge kudos to everybody involved in the academy and the young kids that are coming through. You know, you want to make them feel comfortable in the group, but you know, it's cut through it. You know, and if they don't trust you, they don't give you it.
I'm really glad we got him on during the tour, because we'd watched him a lot the previous season in the EDS, and very good friends with Brian Barry Murphy, and he could not speak more highly of a footballer than he did of Oscar Bob. So when we had sort of half an opportunity to get him in when we were in Japan, I really, really pushed for it, because I had a feeling that he was going to have a big season, and I can't wait maybe towards the end of the season or early next season to get him back on. But just to see that confidence and that growth, you know, see whether we can recognise that in an interview.
On the other side of that as well, sort of May, June time, we put a video out where it was Erling, Bunny, Carlos Borges and Justin Aboada as the top scorers of each, and the players reacted to each other's goals. And it was a Carlos Borges goal, and Oscar Bob picked the ball up, and Erling instantly, his eyes lit up and he went, "Oh, is that Oscar?" So from that moment then I was like, right, well, he's already gained that respect, and he's with the first team, he's embedded in there, they know him, they trust him already, so you earn that, as you've said, but to already have that before he'd even made a proper impact is quite telling.
I think Oscar's got a natural style as well that anyone who loves football is gonna like it, aren't they? So he's got that kind of. Who would your dream guest be, George, if you had to choose?
Dream guest. You know what? I mean, I've done a lot of work with the women's team. I'd love to get Jill Scott on. I think, especially the last 12, 18 months that she's had since she's hung the boots up. And I mean, what a career she had, for one. But then to see what she's then gone on to do, and she's now a mainstay in terms of punditry and media, how she's maybe reacted and coped with that newfound spotlight, and also just generally, if you have the chance to speak with her, she's just such a stand-up person as well, and she'd be another one that I think could really understand the assignment, have a bit of a laugh with it, quite self-deprecating, but also up for a bit of a joke as well. So I think she'd be an absolute.
Let's
belter.
get Jill on.
Yeah.
Can you help us with that, Nedum?
Do you know what? I actually can.
Well, let's do
Actually,
it.
can. Now you said that, I've completely forgotten about Joe.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Agent Nedum.
Yeah, I can sort that out. No dramas. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's a big
There
call.
you
that.
go.
Yeah.
That's
Someone
a big call.
Yeah, sorry, I take that back. Let's cut that bit out. Maybe I can't sort that out. No dramas. But yeah, I'll speak to her. I'm sure she'll be
Okay.
up for it.
Good stuff. Paul, same question to you. If you had to pick a dream guest for you to come on and interrogate, who would it be?
Can I have two? One
Well, of
present
course
and
you
one
can.
past.
Go
Is
on.
that
Go
right?
for it.
Yeah.
Present, I would like to do Kevin.
Yeah.
Not just because look, he's absolutely, for me, the best midfielder in the world and has been for years and years and years. But to talk about how he's been in the 4 months he's been out, because he loves football, that's clear to see. And it was a long journey back for him, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody's been clamouring coming back. Just asking a little bit, has he had to hold himself back and not push himself too much, and what it's like now finally getting back into the team as well. So yes, about his career and everything else, but I would like to know that what his mentality was when he found out, obviously having to come off Champions League final and then looking to start the season flying and then getting injured in that game at Burnley, then having to have the operation and missing it, just how he's handled that himself.
He won't look at it this way because he will have wanted to play. But if you look over the recent years, the amount of games he's played with European Championships, World Cups, Nations Leagues, and obviously all the success City have had, in some ways that 4-month break where he's been to Dubai with his family and all that kind of stuff, it might not be the worst thing in the world.
I spoke to him very briefly because that was manic, wasn't it? After the Champions League final, and obviously did his hamstring, and he said then, this was before we knew he needed to have the operation and everything else, he said it's actually going to be quite nice to have a summer off.
Yeah.
And reset myself, and because I think there was 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons in a row that he's not had a break.
Yeah.
And he was actually quite looking forward to having that break with his family. There was no international football, there was no going to be rushing back for pre-season. So to add to your point, I think that family time that he's had might put a bit of perspective on it as well.
It's mentally as well as much as anything,
It's
isn't it?
the hardest thing
Just having that
when you're
break.
injured.
Absolutely.
You know, when you're in the treatment room, you're seeing the players going out training every day. You know, the squad goes up on a Saturday and you're not involved in it. You're there, but you're not.
You're right, and even like the sort of physical regression as well. You know what I mean? Like you can't run. You know, someone says today we're going to go and run. You try and run as quick as you can, and you basically just walk in. You know, you can't kick anymore, stuff like this, and
things that's always came natural to you.
exactly. I
All of a
think you
sudden
never had
finishes.
to think about before. Yeah.
Who was your other one? Your past guest.
We've spoke about him, Uwe.
Yeah.
Uwe was cult hero with the fans. Obviously, my ex-strike partner. I made my debut up front alongside him back in 1996. Although I've got a few good stories about him that I'm going to pull him up on as well.
On this pod. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Right.
You know, my first game, I signed on the Friday, came on as sub on the Saturday. Uwe from the Friday to the Saturday on the coach pre-match going to Stoke, didn't speak to me.
Right. Okay.
I came on at half time, done all his running,
Okay.
and after the game I sat next to him in the coach and he says, me and you'll do well together. He says, because you like to run here, there and everywhere, and I like to stay in the
Okay,
box. And I'm like,
okay.
yeah, I've got
Yeah,
your
okay,
number.
That's
right?
fair. That's
That
fair.
makes
I like
sense,
that.
yeah. Well, let's try it. Let's try and get Uwe as well then, because
And
you're right.
somebody else who absolutely loves the club as well. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy for players to play for the club then go away and say, oh, the City fans, but he is. You know, any chance he can get to come to games, finals, everything else, he's there.
I used to do his celebration on the living room floor when I was 8 or 9 years old, so I'd love to have him on.
I think the
he's-
fans would love it as well.
Yeah, he's a real legend of the game, isn't he? Nedum, who would you have?
It's a good question. There are quite a few from sort of like my time here we could think about, say younger people and so on. But I also would like to maybe speak with like a Richard Dunn or a Sylvain Distin. You know what I mean? Because they've got such a unique perspective on the club at that time. You know what I mean? And realistically, they were at times holding us together.
Those two, definitely. Be good to get them on together, actually, because that's one of the best centre-back partnerships we've ever had.
Donny's the most underrated player I played with.
Yeah. He was
I totally
phenomenal.
agree. He's one of my favourites to have played with. Played with him at City and at QPR as well. But top draw.
I've got a few dream guests, actually.
Oh, here we go.
How long?
I'll go last, guys. I'll go last. Yeah.
Can I have 5? Is that all right? No, I'm joking.
Here we go.
I mean, I'll rattle through a couple. So one is Niall Quinn, for sure. That's kind of, one of my first main City heroes, and someone with a really interesting story, even with like the Sunderland chairmanship years and all that kind of stuff.
Quinny's boot boy at Arsenal.
You were?
Yeah, as a young 16-year-old.
You do good job, yeah.
His boots were bigger than me. It took me about 3 hours to clean one boot.
Didn't have to deal with the disco
he was
pants,
amazing
did you?
with me. Amazing with me, and we've kept a relationship ever since. What was that?
Didn't have to deal with his disco pants as well, did you?
No.
Just the boots.
That was later.
What a player, though.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of underrated in terms of his technical ability as well, I think, because I think a lot of people look at him and think he was a big target man. I mean, absolutely not. He was unbelievable in the air, of course he was, and defenders couldn't handle him, but in terms of his touch and skill, and he could really play, couldn't he? He was a fantastic footballer.
Technically, he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
As you said, people look at Quinny and saying, was it 6'6", 6'5", and obviously, good in the air. He was strong as well. People look at him and think he was quite gangly and everything else. He was strong. And if you talk to a lot of centre-halves around about that time, who the hardest player they had to play against, a lot of them say Niall. Because his hold-up play, getting in the box, his finishing was unbelievable with both feet. And just but away from that, I just smile because he's just one of the nicest guys ever. Funny, very, very funny. Very intelligent. You know, you look at his career on the pitch and you look at his business head off the pitch. And I remember him talking business-wise when I was, going back to 1990, 1991. When I was a young kid listening in changing rooms, players are talking about what they're going to do after, are they going to go and play snooker? And Quinny's talking about what businesses he's thinking of doing and everything else. So he was way ahead of his time.
Very smart man. Yeah. Well, there's another one. Let's add that to the list. Niall Quinn.
Well, add your one to the list, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, add my one onto the list for sure.
Not scribbled any of ours down.
Exactly. Forget the others.
Alfie
That's
Harland
what I
is
want.
another one.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, because probably should have mentioned it when we spoke to Erling, but City fans don't forget certain things, and I think one of the reasons they still love Alfie is I think it was his debut. I think it was the first game of the season in the 2000-2001 season, I'm pretty sure. And we went to Charlton, and it was it was red hot. And the coach on the way down there was it was kind of like insufferable. It was really, really horrible journey. And Charlton had been promoted with us, and if we were going to stay up, they were the kind of team that we had to beat, and we got absolutely smashed 4-0.
See, I blame Joe for that because he put me on the bench for that.
Right, well, there we go. It was a poor. I mean, it was an abject performance. We got completely outplayed, and from my memory, and this might be wrong, I probably should go back and check, but he was one of the only one, if not the only one, who came over and applauded the fans at the end. And then I think that famous story when he paid for the petrol, I think that was the same day. And City fans don't forget stuff like that, and that's why there was that famous footage that emerged a couple of years ago before Erling signed, where he was at an away game, I think, Alfie, and in the concourse at half time they had him on everybody's shoulders and were singing his name and stuff. And I think all football fans take a great interest in their team, but I do think City fans they love stuff like that. People who same for you, Paul. Your style and the way that you applied yourself and approached the game, that's never been forgotten. I think City fans really appreciate stuff like that. So it'd be nice to get him on as well, I think.
Alfie, if you're watching, you're coming on, mate. I can sort that.
There we go. There's another one on the list.
Yeah, another one of yours, yeah.
I'll take that back. I might be able to sort.
We'll send a message.
What does the future of this podcast look like, Nedum? How would you evolve it?
How would I evolve it?
Yeah, what do we need to be doing to keep it, keep it
A
moving?
couple of new presenters.
Without a doubt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, probably have more engagement with the listeners and the fans, I think.
Yeah.
I think to have more of be able to have more of a back and forth with them, them sending in stuff, whether it's email, whether it's social media, whatever. Because if you feel more involved, you will always watch it. There's never going to be a down episode where I say, oh, maybe not this, maybe not that. I think being connected to them is the key thing, because ultimately, it's like they're here with us in this room. That's the way that I like to think about it. And if there were, say, in theory, 100 people in this room, I wouldn't want them to just stay silent. I want them to be able to say, oh, what about this? What about that? How about so on? So I think a level of engagement. I think the players are starting to understand and buy into it now. Yeah. I think they understand that it's a non-hostile place. And I think the podcast will get better and better and better, because now it's a known entity amongst the inner group. And I think from the outside, I think as Paul said, I'm not sure if it was off air or not, there are people asking to come on, And that is a really good sign.
Yeah.
That's a really good sign for where we're going.
I was going to ask Erling Haaland to ask John Stones if he had come on, because I think he's from current players, he would be my.
He wants another one. He wants another pick.
I'm adding that to the list as well.
This is the official Man City podcast
Shall we
of
have a
Rob
word?
Pollard.
We'll have a word.
Yeah, we'll have a word. Yeah,
George-
He would have been on mine, to be fair. I'll back you on this one, Rob.
Yeah.
Don't go looking for support, you.
Go on.
Don't go looking for
I want the
support
same-
like you care anyway.
I'm going to ask the same question to you about keeping it moving, developing. You know, what can we do? You know, what can we do to keep it it fresh?
I think it'd be lovely to speak to high-profile City fans that aren't necessarily players or former players, so from different walks of life.
What are you trying to say?
Well, got to get our contact book out as well. We can't just rely on you two.
Producer Oliver wants Clive Myrie from the BBC, who's a City fan. And I think producer Oliver also wants Jackie Chan on as well, because apparently he's a City fan. I've got no idea, but it's been mentioned a few times.
Well, that would be brilliant. Just sort of, because you can still have that City conversation and keep it relevant to why they're on, but then also learn more about another area and another sport, another occupation, whatever it is, and branch it out that way maybe.
I'd like to take it on the road at some point. I'd like to do a live podcast. You talk about fan interaction. I'd like to have an audience of City fans at some point. Maybe that's something we can look to do if we're still here in 12 months' time, still doing these things. You know, that would be.
Do you know when you said on the road? I wasn't thinking live podcast as such. I was thinking you're trying to go and see someone in the south of Spain or something.
Oh no,
or you're trying to go to
do that as well.
Italy or wherever. You caught me off guard there. Instead of just on Deansgate.
I'm happy to do that. No,
Okay.
well, I was thinking like the
can go to
football
Italy.
museum or something. You know, but
See Mario in Italy.
Yeah, let's
we
check
go.
in on
Yeah.
Mario.
I'm going to see David Silva.
Mario.
Yeah.
David, yeah.
who's doing his wine thing?
Well, that's
What's the wine thing?
That wasn't at the forefront of my
So
mind.
David Silva is a very keen interest in grapes,
I
and
think he's got his vineyard.
and he's got his vineyard, and he's
So
producing
that's wine thing.
So why don't we
Yeah.
go over there and do him at his vineyard?
Do the podcast first.
Sold.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Sold. In terms of on the road, to your point, I think when we did the episodes on tour, I enjoyed that, and I think obviously the football club will continue to go on tour, hopefully for the women as well in the future, and we should look to try and activate while we're there as well. What about you, Paul? Is there anything?
I'm
you'd
not
like to-
going to copy her, but just reiterate what Nedum said. I think if we'd done a live with getting the fans in there and to interact with the players, get their own questions, and as I said, not just to sit there and listen, but to be part of it as well. I think something we would love. I think the players would appreciate it, and questions are getting asked, and 100% the fans would love that.
Nedum, what about the Kyle Walker episode? That was our first.
It was, yeah.
After the relaunch.
It was.
What are your memories of that one?
Oh, this is going back some now, isn't it? When was this? When was it? Was this last season?
It was last season.
So this was the time when there was like speculation that
A
like
bit of research would have been nice.
yeah,
Sorry.
this was the
Sorry.
time when when there was speculation like people saying, "Oh, Kyle, he can't play right back in this system," and so on and so forth. Blah blah blah. And then he sat down and he told us what was what. Told us how he felt in any particular situation. Told us how driven he was, how driven the team is. And this is before they'd won anything that season. And you could see he had a belief in himself and all those around him. And he also showed the sort of nuances of like the highs and lows of being a player. Really open and honest from that standpoint. This is someone now, as we look today, he's the captain of the football club, But at the time of recording, I'm sure some people from the outside would have said he's probably on his way. But instead, as I say, he forms an integral part of what that second half of the season was. Wins the 3 trophies of Champions League, then proceeds to win even more trophies in the next year, even after speculation saying that he was going somewhere else. So looking back, it's a nice little anchor point to see how things changed.
Absolutely.
And changed
Football can
absolutely
change
for the
quite
better.
quickly.
I remember watching it.
Yeah.
The one thing that came out from Kyle was a determination to prove people wrong.
Yes.
And that was just watching it from the outside, not knowing the questions that were getting asked beforehand or anything else, just watching it. He had that little glint in his eye to go out there and show everybody what it was all about.
And fast forward 5-6 months, whatever it is, and I think we can say that that's happened. Have we got a question for one another? George, have you got a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I initially wanted to ask who you'd want in future, and then you obviously saw my notes, and
Start on that.
so when I've been staring into space, I've been
Plagiarism,
thinking,
yeah.
what am I going to do here? I suppose the key one for me would be if there was a player is someone that you could have played with, and obviously someone that you could have just enjoyed watching as a fan. So you can answer as well, obviously, Rob, is there a player that you feel doesn't get the recognition they fully deserve from elsewhere? So you mentioned Richard Dunn earlier. I don't know if he'd be your answer, but yeah, player you played with or
Past
watched.
or present, or it doesn't matter.
Either. Yeah.
That is,
Have to have a think about that.
yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
In past, yeah, like I say, I was so fortunate because when I first started playing, I was playing right back. I wasn't a right back, but I was playing right back. Ahead of me was Sean Wright-Phillips, having the best season of his career. To the left of me was Richard Dunn, who was in his 3rd Player of the Year award out of 4. And then the one which he didn't get was because the person next to him was Sylvain Distin getting that one. But still, Dunn and Distin, to me, I hold them in the same regard as how I do Company and Lescott, in the same regard as how I hold like Stones and Diaz or whoever the partnerships are now. And I know each stage is different, but they're all just as important for whatever the team was in that time. So I think those 2 centre-backs, for me, incredibly underrated, because I know people did not want to play against them.
It was good. Nice to hear you say the phrase before they held us together, because that's how it felt, from the stands, and to actually hear a player say that. And they did have that, you mentioned some great partnerships there, and a lot of centre-back partnerships, they have that balance of attributes. And we had the left foot, right foot. You had one who was a bit more classy on the ball and one who was very strong, physical, but deceptively quick. Richard Dunn as well, by the way. And together, it just worked, didn't it? It worked.
And they were, best of all, as a young player, as Paul was saying earlier, it can be quite daunting to enter a first-team environment. But those 2 were magnificent for young players, because they knew that even if you weren't at your absolute best at any particular point, you were still there for a reason. So they gave you the opportunity to grow. If you made a mistake, like, they'd tell you it was a mistake, but they wouldn't like chastise you for the fact you've made a mistake, because you don't know the game the way that they do at that point. And I think, as we all know, like, players make mistakes on the field, off the field, and so on. And I think their understanding of that as you came in, like, if those 2 weren't there, especially Dunny, the 30, 40 players that made it through the academy at that time probably end up having different careers to the ones that they had, because he was integral as captain as well.
Paul, same question to you, please.
Present, the obvious one's KDB. Being a forward, it must be an absolute dream. You would just have to make your run and not even look up. And then the only thing I can get close to is being a young kid, going back to the Arsenal days, was Dennis Bergkamp.
This guy is flexing.
Wow. But even in training as a forward, if you made a run and Dennis had the ball, it could be 5 yards away, 10 yards, 20, 40, 50. You wouldn't have to look over your shoulder to see what was coming. And Dennis just used to say, a young kid, just make the run and I'll find you. Not in an arrogant way, but in a, I will find you. And I think it's the same with Kevin. When he's got the ball in that inside right area or inside left, and he just takes that touch, everybody knows, defenders know where the ball's going. They can't stop it. So as a striker, you've just got to get yourself in the right position to go and finish it off.
Dennis Bergkamp walks into the best Premier League 11 of all time,
It was ridiculous, Rob.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that much time, I won't question that. I'll just let it be. Okay. Yeah. But I could easily push back against that.
I mean, he does.
No, that's be...
You're the only man younger than me, so you probably didn't see him. But
the first, second and third in goal of the month one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
do you know what I loved about him as well? He was, obviously everybody's seen him, he's this touch, elegant. He was nasty.
That's
he didn't mind leaving a bit on.
Oh no, he had that side to him,
especially his first season. I think you could see all these big hairy centre-halves thinking he's getting it, and he could take it and he could dish it out as well.
Rob, we'll stick a pin in that, and maybe that'll appear on the podcast at some point.
Okay,
because that will be mentioned again.
Yeah. Okay,
is he the player you don't think got the recognition they deserved?
I mean, it's a funny one because Bergkamp is clearly held up as a great, but I do think there might be a slight underrated thing, because I'm not sure most people.
I'm biased for me.
Why would you point your hand at me? Say for most people.
I don't think most people.
I literally watched him. I think,
Premier
in fact,
Premier League 11.
When did he leave Arsenal?
06.
So probably played against him.
Good research.
Yeah. So
and I'm sure he had you on toast, pal.
I'm sure it was 1-1 in the game. Actually, I'm sure it was 1-1. But anyway, this is a City podcast. Enough of this Bergkamp talk.
Seriously, Paul.
Past David Silva. I know it's recent past as well. Obviously, you hear Jolene talk about him. You hear players in the squad at the same time, and not even just to train with him and see how good he was. We all know how he was, and I remember going one of the pre-seasons to the States. I don't know if it was Pep's first or anything else. I'm watching the first training session, and then obviously there was Aguero, there was KDB, there was Vinny, there was all these wonderful, and he was just a level above, taking the ball in tight areas, people up his backside, people in front, and 2-3 people, and just his awareness, his speed of thought, his touch, and everything else. I just think it would have been an honour. It was an honour watching the training sessions out there and just seeing how good he was, because you think you know how good they are, and then you actually see them live in that environment, and you've no idea. So to be able to be in the pitch with David Silva, one of the best players Manchester City I've ever had.
Absolutely.
I think to call it an honour is right, and I didn't do it for long, but I did train with him and play with him. I remember there was a game we were playing, and I had the ball, and bearing in mind this is like a different city, kind of making a transition or whatever. I had the ball, and he's coming towards me, and David Silva's not like strong. He doesn't look strong or anything like that, and I don't really know his game. And there's someone right on his back, so I didn't pass him the ball. Passed it somewhere else. It's like I can't give it to him, so I gave it somewhere else. And he was telling me off. He said, "Why don't you not give me the ball?" I was like, "Well, because there's someone behind you." He says, "No, that's when I want the ball, because that's when he's in control of the situation." And that's the first time I'd ever really played with someone who thought about the game through that lens.
I try and say that to the lads at 5-a-side, and they still don't give me the ball.
Yeah, there's probably a reason for that.
I'm not gonna. I refuse to engage with that. I refuse to engage with that.
Sorry.
Next.
Do you have a question for? Well, you're not asking me what.
Well, I'll ask George, and you can.
Do you have a question for George?
Yeah, well, George touched on it before about nicking his notes. I remember when we done the Bunny Shaw one, and we're chatting about what questions we're going to ask and everything else. By the time it came to me, you had no questions to ask us. He had nicked all the questions already.
Yeah.
So could you do your own research next time, please?
Is that rhetorical? Or?
Yeah.
On the subject as well, talking about Bunny. I mean, obviously not my finest hour, was it, Paul? At the end.
No, it wasn't. I can vouch for that.
No.
What happened?
So, without going into too much detail, I've got a lazy eye and I've got no depth perception. So I'm terrible.
Excuses coming out already.
I know, yeah, well, we've got to get them in first, haven't I? Because it's so bad. I'm terrible at handshakes and high fives, all this. I basically just miss people. So I made this really conscious effort when Bunny came in to actually meet her hand and be like, right, I'm gonna get this one right, because it's on camera, and I know what you're like, and I know what the producers are like.
Yeah, upstanding citizens.
I'd be seeing it for years on end if I'd missed the handshake. So I nailed it. I went in, grabbed the hand, squeezed, eye contact with Bunny, and was like, "Hi, Bunny, welcome to the podcast." And like, she grimaced, and I was like, "Oh God, I'm not that bad, am I?" And I looked down. She had a cast on her hand.
You see, the cast was a clue, believe it or not.
That's why I started when I got a lazy eye. I can't see it.
I just sat down. I wanted to get up and walk back out again.
Yeah.
I think she did, to be fair, until you started talking to her.
She took it well, to be fair.
She did.
Yeah.
This is why I shouldn't always stay on a script, you know what I mean? You thought that the right thing to do is to shake someone's hand firmly. Well, maybe not if they've got a hand
I was
issue,
waiting to come out of the podcast and have about 15 missed calls from Gareth Taylor being like, "She's out for weeks, what have you done?" All this. But yeah, I think if she'd been a goalkeeper, it might have been a bit different. But
This is true.
yeah.
Strong start.
I know.
Yeah.
It was a classic. You know, when you wake up at like 2 a.m. and you're like, "Oh my God, why did I do that?"
Yeah.
So,
Have you had any weird handshakes, Rob?
Yeah, what about you and handshakes?
What's going on? What do you prefer? Do you
See,
prefer like the knuckles, or do you prefer handshakes? What's your preference? Just so I know for next time.
See, I don't have a lazy eye, and my depth perception is fine. So I don't have an excuse.
To be fair, we both kind of messed up, but it's an iconic.
I was going to say, it does take two to tango, and
does, yeah.
the dreadful, I mean, I don't even know what it was.
What
It was
was
sort
worse?
of a dance.
Who
Two hands dancing, sort of
did I go to?
not in sync.
So did I go to dap you up, or did I go to shake your hand?
I can't remember. I mean, to deconstruct that it would take us hours. It was shocking. It really was.
So just stick to hugs next time.
I mean, I haven't got much of a reputation to uphold anyway, but whatever was left got completely obliterated by
it's
that
gone. Yeah, it's gone.
abomination.
It's iconic. We should find a way to post that on something social.
Well, somebody's done God's work and made it into a GIF,
Yeah.
and it's used kind of any time in a WhatsApp group where two people agree on something.
I need to see that.
It's
Yeah,
kind
it's,
of
uh,
flashed up as a kind of yeah, we're on the same
It's
page.
the beauty of working with very talented video editors, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's one where we played our annual staff game at the end of the year, and You scored. To be fair play. You scored an absolute worldie, top corner, and then ran off to celebrate with Nedum, and then they've got the handshake over the top of it.
It's brilliant.
Goal.
This is what we do. I think the audience should see it.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I didn't play either. They wanted to make it
It
fair.
never happened. It's fun to see. It never happened.
The staff game, yeah, I don't know.
Never happened. He's big time anyway.
After I scored our trick in the last one, not been invited back. So
I set a couple of
probably
those
why.
up, I seem to remember as well.
Yeah, you did.
Well, maybe we'll post the highlights to them to mitigate the disaster of the handshake. But yeah, no, we will. We'll put it out there in some form or another.
Yeah.
For those who didn't get to see it the first time.
It's the best bit of any podcast we've had. Guests, anything.
That's a sad indictment of this podcast.
Rob.
Go
So, human nature suggests that we like certain people more than we like others. Yeah. But do you think there is sort of room within your mind and body to interview someone associated with City who maybe you didn't like, but then to sort of fall for them based on, say, the interview that you have?
Yeah, I think it's happened. I won't give a specific example, but that's happened before. Yeah,
Okay.
where you have a kind of preconceived idea of someone, and then it's like anything, 'cause sometimes you see someone from a distance, and you're kind of making your mind up, and then when you actually have the opportunity or the privilege, which obviously it is for us a lot of the time, because we're speaking to such interesting people, they can change your perception when you really start to dig deep. So yeah, and I suppose when I'm drawing up a list of people I want to speak to, I will gravitate towards the ones I think I'm probably going to like. But
For an easy job, you mean?
for an easy
So
job,
you can say how good they are and
But
give them all their stats
yeah.
about how many goals they scored and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But then
Yeah.
sometimes the more interesting conversations you have with people who you don't necessarily expect to like as much, or yeah,
It's good to know.
Kind
Yeah.
of just on that point, and I don't mean it as in a preconception as in who they are as a person, but I felt very similar with the Bunny podcast because I had this vision of, we've all seen how she plays her goal record. You think she's been a striker from day dot. Football's always been first, and she was telling us I played in midfield.
Her story was amazing, yeah,
It
wasn't
was incredible. She was like, oh yeah, I went to college because obviously she's from Jamaica. I went to college to come out, get a degree, and go back and work. And then it just so happened that I went for football, but then
But she'd only played a striker before she moved over for one season.
she was playing attacking midfield.
and now she's literally the best in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even football. She almost happily stumbled into it the way she was talking, rather than I've driven up. It's my dream and stuff.
That's
So-
what jealousy looks like.
Imagine being that good.
That's what it looks like.
Well, she went for education, didn't she?
Exactly.
She didn't go to the
Exactly.
scholarship and play football. She went for education and just found out she was ridiculously good at it.
Okay, must be nice, yeah.
Yeah, just that was one that I remember coming out of and just thinking, I've really learned something here, and I think she enjoyed it as well, which is what was really nice. And looking at her now and her stats and what she's going to go on to achieve,
I think that's the
thinking
big
she wasn't
thing I
really
can
that
take
interested.
from the podcast, and we've only done a few, or I've only done a few. You've done a lot more. Is I think all the players, men and women, have genuinely enjoyed it when they've came away from it.
100%, which is the most satisfying thing.
Absolutely.
Because you see, they walk in sometimes, and I'm not saying they don't want to be there necessarily, but they're busy people, But then you see the body language, and when they leave the room, and it makes you feel like we've done something
To be
good.
fair, I don't blame them. When they walk in and see you sitting down at the tablet,
It's the
and
last
just
thing they want to do is.
the more if you make eye contact with them, if
Yeah.
the lights are on them, sit down here.
Yeah.
You. This is about to begin. Yeah, but
They're going to get a grilling. No, I'm joking.
yeah, turns out you're all right.
One last question. So, my favourite question that a player has left for somebody else was Ruben Diaz left the question, who in the City squad smells the best? And Erling, after quite some deliberation, actually, I don't want to give too much away with that episode isn't out there, so I won't say who Erling said smelled the best, but put it this way, I knew who he was going to say, and he got it right.
It's a weird segment, by the way.
I want to ask you two.
What's weirder is I knew who Rob was thinking of.
Listen, you're all getting scrapped together. Weird.
Who of all the people you played with smelt the best? Paul, I'm coming to you first.
Yeah, there was a few who smelled bad.
Yeah.
Trust me, I won't name any names though. The best, probably, and it was a status thing, Ian Wright.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I was a young kid, I was on YTS money, I couldn't afford the aftershaves that he would buy at the same time, but he always smelt magnificent.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Great answer. Nedum.
Great answer. City podcast talking about Ian Wright.
City, Patrick Vieira.
Do you know, in that
Good
case,
one.
I'll double on that.
Yeah.
Patrick Vieira.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it?
Even now,
what's
when
his
you see
secret?
that, it just smells
Because you don't,
magnificent.
people, staff.
I want to snuggle into him. He smells that nice.
Yes, staff used to say he smells magnificent. Can't name names on this pod necessarily, but it has been discussed that Patrick Vieira smells incredible.
Yeah.
But then also, like, through my generation, some guys smell incredible because they'd be taking other people's aftershave and stuff anyway, because they wouldn't get their own. But Patrick very much has his own.
Yeah.
And, like, the ladies that worked at the football club used to love it.
So is it just aftershave, or is the creams involved, do you think, as well? Or
I
body
would not be watching him
lotions?
like that, to be honest.
No.
I tended not to, but I
No.
always knew when he was in the room.
But we need to get him on.
He always used to have
Yeah,
the
Patrick's a
older-
shout. Patrick's a shout. Yeah,
We need to dig deep on this.
yeah. I'll sort that out. Yeah.
He always used to have the Olbasol, didn't he? When he was playing, he had like or was it the vapor?
Yeah.
Oh, to
the
help
old
with the
school,
breathing.
yeah.
And that smells.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that smells delightful anyway.
That's
So.
it's a bit poorly, but yeah. That's
Bit
right.
medical, yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, and on that bombshell,
Cutting
that
edge
is
journalism.
the end of this review episode. So we relaunched the podcast. We're 20 episodes in. We all seem to be enjoying it. Thank you so much for joining us today to go back over it, to discuss some of our favourite moments, and we've got some ideas for future guests that we want to get on, and some changes we might make and some things we might do in the future. So, but thank you so much for being involved in it. You know, I'm going to be serious for one
I
second.
thought you were going to say we've got some gifts for us or something. The
No,
way you were leaning in
no,
there.
absolutely
I thought it was a
not.
gift coming.
No,
Definitely not.
maybe when we do 100 episodes, maybe.
Right, a bit of work to do
But,
then. A bit of work to do.
But in a moment of sincerity, thanks for being a part of it, because honestly,
Pleasure.
you two, you bring so much, and obviously we're just sort of humble fans and writers, and I think when they see you there and they hear, you know, you've had shared experiences and they know what you've been through, the things that they have, it makes them open up more. So without you guys, I don't think we'd be getting anywhere near what we get out of the players.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
thanks very much.
You're right, yeah. That's
Bang
right,
on.
yeah. It's about us. It's
That's
got
probably
nothing to
the
do
most
with you.
truest word you've ever
Yeah,
spoken.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally. Don't need to fact check you on that one.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Enjoyed.
Cheers. Thank you.
The unbeatable official Manchester City podcast. Watch the full video version of this show via City Plus now.